Dr. Hana Kim pushed her glasses up her nose and stared at the tiny organisms swimming under her microscope. The lab was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the distant sound of people talking in the hallways. She had been working alone for 3 hours, just like every day for the past 2 years. Hana was not the kind of person others noticed. She was short, wore simple clothes, and spoke only when someone asked her a direct question. While other scientists on research station, Kepler 442, gave big presentations about their discoveries, Hana just wrote her reports and filed them away. She studied bacteria from distant planets, work that most people found boring. The research station was huge, floating in empty space between 2 dead solar systems. 200 people lived and worked there, but Hana knew maybe 20 of them, by name. She ate her meals alone, reading scientific papers on her tablet. She walked the same route from her small room to her lab every morning at exactly 7:30. The station was not just for humans. The Galactic Confederation had placed alien observers there too. The Vreks looked like giant praying mantises made of blue crystal. They moved slowly and spoke in buzzing sounds that the translation computers turned into cold, formal words. The Thermal Empire representatives were tall and thin, with skin that looked like flowing metal. They barely looked at humans when they passed them in the corridors. Commander Min Lee ran the human part of the station. He was a good man, but always stressed about keeping the aliens happy. During weekly staff meetings, he would remind everyone to be respectful and not cause trouble. "We are guests in their galaxy," he would say. "We must prove we deserve to be here." Hana usually sat in the back during these meetings, taking notes about supply requests and equipment maintenance. She never raised her hand or asked questions. Dr. Tae Park, who studied star formation, always had something to say. Dr. Gino, who worked on new engine designs, loved to argue about funding. Hana just listened and went back to her bacteria. But 3 weeks ago, something changed. Hana had been running a routine scan of the outer system looking for interesting microbes on asteroids. Her equipment picked up something strange. Energy readings that were too organized, too powerful to be natural. She ran the scan again and got the same results. The readings showed massive construction in the shadow of a dead moon. Ships were being built there, big ones with weapons. Military ships. But according to all the official reports, that area was empty space. No one was supposed to be building anything there. Hana spent 2 days checking her equipment. She calibrated every sensor twice. She ran diagnostic programs on all her computers. Everything was working perfectly. Someone was building a secret fleet in their system. She printed out her data and walked to Commander Lee's office. Her hands were shaking a little as she knocked on his door. She was not used to reporting things that seemed important. "Commander Lee, I found something you should see." Lee looked up from his desk, covered with papers and data tablets. He looked tired. "What is it, Kim?" Hana spread out her readings on his desk. "My long-range sensors detected large energy signatures in Sector 7. Military-grade construction. Someone is building warships there." Lee glanced at the papers without really reading them. "Kim, you study bacteria. Leave military assessments to people who know about these things. Probably just some asteroid mining operation." "Sir, I ran the scans multiple times. These readings are definitely weapons platforms, large ones. I'm sure it's nothing. File your report and get back to your real work." Hana felt her face get hot, but she just nodded and gathered her papers. She had never been good at arguing with people in authority. 2 days later, she tried a different approach. She requested a meeting with Sector Administrator Vexhai, the senior Vrex representative. His office was in the alien section of the station, where the air was colder and smelled like ozone. Vexhai was 8 feet tall, his crystal body reflecting light in strange patterns. When he spoke, his voice came through speakers in the wall, because human ears could not hear his natural frequency. "Small human researcher," he said, his translated voice flat and emotionless. "You have concerns about sensor readings?" Hana showed him the same data she had shown Commander Lee. "Administrator, there is significant military construction in Sector 7. I believe the Hegemony Empire is building a battle fleet there. The alien's mandibles clicked together, which the translation system rendered as laughter. Your primitive scanning equipment is clearly malfunctioning, small one. The hegemony empire has no business in this sector. We would know of any significant military presence, but the energy signatures are consistent with, you are dismissed, small human researcher. Return to your microorganisms. Hana left the meeting feeling smaller than ever. She tried talking to other human researchers, but they all said the same thing. She was overreacting. She was seeing things that were not there. She should stick to what she knew. But late at night, alone in her lab, Hana kept running the scans. The readings were getting stronger. More ships were being built every day, and nobody would listen to the quiet woman who studied bacteria. She did not know that in 2 weeks those ships would attack. She did not know that her warnings would be proven right in the worst possible way. She only knew that something terrible was coming, and she was completely alone with the knowledge. The first explosion shook the entire station. Hana dropped her coffee mug and watched it shatter on the lab floor as red emergency lights began flashing. The station's alarm system screamed through the corridors, a sound she had only heard during safety drills. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Hana ran to the nearest observation window. Outside in the black of space, she could see them, massive dark ships appearing from nowhere, their hulls covered in weapon ports that glowed with deadly energy. The hegemony empire had come. I tried to warn them, she whispered to herself, watching the enemy fleet take positions around the station. The station's defense systems activated automatically. Small laser turrets popped out from the station's hull and began firing. The beams looked like tiny sparks against the huge enemy ships. The hegemony vessels did not even slow down. Commander Lee's voice came over the intercom, tight with panic. All civilian personnel to the evacuation pods immediately. Military personnel to battle stations. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. Unknown forces. Even now he would not admit what Hana had discovered weeks ago. People were running everywhere. Scientists grabbed important data files. Engineers shut down dangerous equipment. Families, with children, pushed through the crowds toward the evacuation areas. Hana saw Dr. Tae Park helping an injured technician walk toward the medical bay, but something made her stop running. Through another window, she saw sleek silver ships launching from the station's diplomatic bay. The Confederation vessels. The Vrex and Thermal Empire representatives were leaving. They were abandoning the humans without even trying to help. Hana felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. After years of treating humans like junior partners, like children who needed guidance, the aliens were running away at the first sign of real trouble. Cowards, she said out loud. Another explosion rocked the station. This one was much closer. The enemy ships were targeting the station's main power generators. Soon there would be no lights, no air recycling, no heat. Everyone left on board would die slowly in the dark. Instead of running toward the evacuation pods, Hana turned and ran back toward her lab. She had an idea. It was probably crazy, but it was better than doing nothing. Her laboratory was full of expensive scientific equipment, quantum spectrometers that could analyze matter at the atomic level, particle accelerators that could generate exotic energy fields, molecular assemblers that could build complex structures, atom by atom. All of it designed for peaceful research. But Hana had spent 2 years studying extremophile bacteria, organisms that lived in the most dangerous environments in the galaxy. She understood exotic energy patterns better than most people. And right, now she was very angry. Dr. J. Cho burst into her lab, his face covered with soot from a fire somewhere else in the station. Kim, what are you doing? We need to evacuate now. I'm buying time, Hana said, pulling cables from one machine and connecting them to another. Help me move this spectrometer. Are you insane? The station is under attack. Exactly. And everyone is just giving up. Hana's hands were steady as she rewired her equipment. Those ships out there have energy shields. But I know how energy shields work. They have frequencies. Everything has frequencies. She worked faster than she had ever worked in her life. The quantum spectrometer became the targeting system. The particle accelerator became the power source. The molecular assembler became the weapon itself, programmed to create unstable particles that would disrupt shield harmonics. More explosions. The station shook so hard that tools fell off the lab benches. Through the intercom, she could hear people screaming, calling for help that was not coming. Kim, this is crazy. Even if your jury-rigged weapon works, there are dozens of enemy ships out there. Then we make dozens of weapons. Hana grabbed her tablet and began copying her improvised weapon design. Send this to every lab on the station. Every engineer, every technician. Tell them to build these and install them on the outer hull. Jay stared at the tablet screen. You want to turn the entire research station into a weapon? I want to turn it into something that can fight back. For the next hour, Hana coordinated the defense effort from her lab. Scientists who had never built anything more dangerous than a computer became weapons engineers. Maintenance crews who usually fixed air recyclers began installing particle beam arrays. The quiet research station transformed into something the hegemony had not expected to face. But it was not enough. The enemy had too many ships, too much firepower. The station's improvised weapons were holding them back, but barely. More sections were losing power. More people were getting hurt. Hana made her way to the communications center as the final. Defensive barriers began to fail. She could hear hegemony soldiers cutting through the hull with plasma torches. They would be inside the station within minutes. She sat down at the main communications console and activated the emergency broadcast system. Her message would go out to every human colony, every human ship, every human settlement in the galaxy. This is Dr. Hana Kim of Research Station Kepler 442, she said into the microphone, her voice steady and clear. The Galactic Confederation has abandoned us. Our alien allies have fled while human civilians die. The hegemony empire is moving against human space and we are alone. Plasma fire began cutting through the communication center door. Sparks flew across the room. They think we are weak because we are alone, Hana continued. Show them what humans do when you threaten our own. The door exploded inward. Armored figures in environmental suits stormed into the room, weapons raised. Hana smiled at them as the plasma fire filled her vision. Her message was already spreading across the galaxy. Hana's message played on every human world within 48 hours, in military bases, corporate boardrooms, and family homes across the galaxy. People watched the recording of a quiet scientist making her final stand. Her words hit humanity like a lightning bolt. On New Seoul, Admiral Dong Kim watched the transmission for the 7th time. His office was dark except for the glow of the holographic display showing Hana's face. When the message ended with plasma fire and static, he sat in silence for a long moment. Sir? His aide asked quietly. Get me Fleet Command, Admiral Kim said, his voice hard as steel. Tell them we're done playing by their rules. Across human space, the same scene played out thousands of times. Captain Yan Bei on Busan Colony quietly began sharing restricted military blueprints with civilian shipyards. Engineer Bo Han on the mining station. Sejong started building weapons instead of mining equipment. Teacher Young Park on Earth began teaching her students about military history instead of peaceful cooperation. The alien betrayal had broken something inside humanity. For decades, they had followed Confederation rules, accepted junior status, and tried to prove they belonged in galactic civilization. Now they knew the truth. When trouble came, they would always be alone. But humans were good at being alone. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars on their home planet. They had learned to adapt, to innovate, to fight when fighting was necessary. Underground networks that had been quiet for years suddenly came alive. Secret communication channels buzzed with activity. Weapons designs that had been hidden away were shared freely. Technologies that the Confederation had restricted began appearing in human factories. And in the wreckage of Research Station Kepler 442, something impossible happened. Captain Wu Han brought his salvage ship New Hope to the destroyed station 3 days after the attack. The station was a twisted wreck, its hull cracked open like a broken egg. Most of it was frozen solid, exposed to the vacuum of space. Scans show no life signs, reported his sensor operator, Ensign Mi Shin. But there's something weird in the quantum laboratory section. I'm getting strange energy readings. Wu frowned at his displays. Strange how? Like space is folded wrong in that area. My instruments can't get a clear reading. They found Hana Kim in the ruins of her laboratory, surrounded by a bubble of distorted space-time. She was unconscious but alive, somehow protected by an energy field that should not have been possible. Her improvised weapons had exploded during the attack, exposing her to exotic particles that would have killed anyone else. Instead, they had changed her. When Hana woke up in the medical bay of the New Hope, she could see things differently. The walls of the ship were not solid barriers, but patterns of vibrating energy. The space outside was not empty, but full of currents and flows that could be redirected, folded, shaped. "How do you feel?" asked Dr. Sung Lee, the ship's medic. Hana sat up slowly, looking at her hands. She could see the quantum patterns in her own cells, the way her enhanced brain was processing information at incredible speeds. Different. I can see more than before. Within a week, she was drawing blueprints for technologies that should not have existed. Engines that folded space instead of pushing through it. Weapons that disrupted matter at the quantum level. Shield. Systems that bent reality around them. Engineer Bin-No stared at her designs with disbelief. This is impossible. The mathematics alone would take our best computers years to solve. Not impossible, Hana said quietly, her eyes distant as she perceived dimensions beyond normal human understanding. Just elegant. The aliens have been using brute force for thousands of years. We can be smarter. She worked 18 hours a day, designing the ships that would become humanity's ghost fleet. But she was not working alone. Across human space, scientists and engineers were having the same realization. The Confederation's restrictions had been holding humanity back. Without those limits, human innovation exploded. Dr. Kang An on Incheon Station developed new armor materials that were stronger than anything the aliens used. Physicist He Seo on Daegu Colony created energy weapons that could punch through any known shield. Mathematician Bok Ryu on Ulsan Outpost designed navigation systems that could calculate hyperspace jumps in real time. But it was Hana's space-folding technology that changed everything. Her enhanced mind could perceive the flaws in alien ship designs, the weaknesses in their tactics, the blind spots in their thinking. They build their ships like fortresses, she explained to Admiral Kim during a secure transmission. Big, heavily armored, difficult to destroy, but also slow, predictable, and easy to outmaneuver. And you're suggesting we build ships like dancers instead of tanks? Exactly. Speed over strength, precision over power, intelligence over brute force. The first prototype ship using Hana's designs was completed in secret at a hidden shipyard in the asteroid belt. It was smaller than any human military vessel, but when it engaged the space-folding drive, it could appear anywhere in the solar system within seconds. The test pilot, Commander Dal Song, could barely believe the readouts. This is incredible. We can be anywhere, anytime. The enemy will never know where we're coming from. More ships followed. Humanity's ghost fleet grew in hidden shipyards across dozens of systems, and at the center of it all was Hana Kim, the quiet scientist who had become the architect of humanity's revenge. She had not chosen this role. She had only wanted to study bacteria and file her reports. But the galaxy had pushed humanity too far, and now she was the one pushing back. The aliens had awakened something in humanity they did not understand, something that had been sleeping for too long, and Hana Kim was about to show them what happened when you threatened the wrong species. The Hegemony Empire learned what fear meant when 17 of their worlds burned at the same moment. Admiral Kethvar was drinking his morning nutrients on the command deck of the battleship Dominion when his sensor operator began screaming, "Sir, multiple contacts appearing across the fleet, they're everywhere." Human ships materialized from folded space like ghosts becoming solid. One moment the Hegemony patrol fleet was alone in empty space. The next moment, sleek human vessels surrounded them from every direction. "Impossible," Admiral Kethvar hissed, through his breathing apparatus. "Our sensors would have detected them approaching." Sir, they didn't approach. They just appeared. The human ships moved like nothing the hegemony had ever seen. They danced through space, appearing and disappearing, striking from impossible angles. When hegemony weapons fired at them, they simply folded space and emerged somewhere else entirely. On the bridge of the human flagship Determination, Hana Kim watched the battle unfold with calm satisfaction. Her enhanced perception let her see the patterns in enemy movements before they happened. She could predict where each hegemony ship would be in the next 30 seconds. Target the command vessel, she told her weapons officer, Lieutenant Ray Yun. Their admiral is about to order a retreat to grid 774. We'll be waiting for him there. How do you know that? Because that's what their tactical manual says to do in this situation. They follow their rules. We make new ones. The Determination folded space and appeared directly behind the hegemony flagship. Its main weapon, based on Hana's quantum disruption designs, fired once. The massive alien battleship simply came apart at the molecular level, its atoms losing cohesion and drifting away like dust. Across the galaxy, the same scene played out on 17 different worlds. General Daesong led the assault on the primary hegemony shipyards, his fleet appearing inside their defensive perimeter like magic. Captain Min Jiang hit their weapons manufacturing centers. Commander Nai Lim struck their fuel depots. The hegemony empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force for thousands of years. Their ships were enormous, their weapons devastating, their armor nearly impenetrable. But they had never faced an enemy that could simply ignore distance and time. All units, remember Kim's lessons, General Song broadcast to his fleet as they tore through the shipyard defenses. They think in straight lines. We think in curves. They plan for yesterday's battle. We fight tomorrow's war. The human ships moved like a school of fish, coordinated but unpredictable. When hegemony reinforcements arrived, the human fleet would scatter, only to reform behind the enemy and strike again. When the aliens tried to protect their most important targets, the humans would appear at their least defended positions. But it was not just the technology that made the difference. It was the people using it. The hegemony empire was built on hierarchy and rigid command structures. Orders came from the top and were followed without question. When their communication networks were disrupted, individual ship captains did not know what to do. Human crews were different. They had grown up adapting to situations, making decisions on their own, working together as teams instead of following orders blindly. When communication was cut, they kept fighting. When their plans failed, they made new ones. Lieutenant Colonel Supark commanded a strike force attacking a hegemony fortress world. When her flagship was damaged and lost its space-folding drive, she did not retreat. Instead, she ordered her other ships to create a series of small spatial folds, jumping from one to another in a chain reaction that brought her disabled ship safely to the target. "Sir, how did you know that would work?" asked her navigator. "I didn't," Park admitted. "But humans are good at making things work." The fortress fell within 6 hours. On the diplomatic front, the Galactic Confederation finally woke up to what was happening. Emergency sessions were called. Peace delegations were hastily assembled. The same aliens who had abandoned humanity during the attack on Kepler 442 now begged for meetings. Hana received their messages aboard the Determination as her fleet finished destroying the last hegemony stronghold in the Outer Rim. Sector Administrator Vexhai, the same Vrex who had dismissed her warnings, appeared on her communication screen looking desperate. "Commander Kim, we must discuss terms for ending this conflict. The Confederation is prepared to offer significant concessions." Hana looked at him for a long moment. Behind her, through the observation windows, the burning wreckage of Hegemony Prime drifted in space. The planet that had been the center of their empire was now a collection of asteroid-sized chunks. "You had your chance to stand with us," she said finally. "You chose to abandon us instead. Humanity remembers." "But surely we can negotiate." Hana cut the transmission. The message was clear to every species in the galaxy. The humans were no longer asking for permission. They were no longer seeking approval from their supposed betters. They had tried cooperation and been betrayed. Now they would do things their own way. News of the 17 simultaneous attacks spread faster than the human ships themselves. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew that a small, supposedly primitive race had just destroyed the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The hegemony empire had ruled through fear for millennia. In 6 months, humanity had reduced it to scattered refugee fleets hiding in the dark spaces between stars. And at the center of it all was Hana Kim, the quiet scientist who had become the most feared military commander in galactic history. She still preferred studying bacteria to commanding fleets. But the galaxy had made its choice when it abandoned her people. Now it would live with the consequences. 5 years after the attack on Kepler 442, the galaxy looked very different. Hana Kim stood at the observation deck of Unity Station, watching. Alien delegates wait in long lines for the chance to speak with human representatives. The same beings who had once treated humans like children now came as visitors asking for favors. Through the massive windows, she could see ships from dozens of species docked at the station. Vexhai diplomatic vessels with their crystal hulls. Thermal Empire trade ships made of flowing metal. Even some former hegemony survivors in their patched-up warships, hoping to negotiate safe passage through human space. Dr. Kim? Ambassador Jin Park approached with his daily reports. He was young for such an important job, but the old diplomatic corps had been replaced after the Confederation's betrayal. The Thermal Empire wants to extend their trade agreement again. The Vexhai coalition is asking about formalizing their defense pact, and the Confederation Council needs help with their border dispute. Hana accepted the data tablet, scrolling through requests that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were now asking humans to solve their problems. Schedule them appropriately, she said, but make sure they understand our terms. Equal partners, not masters and servants. Respect, not condescension. She was 38 years old but looked exactly the same as she had 5 years ago. The quantum enhancement that had saved her life had also stopped her aging, but her eyes showed the weight of being responsible for humanity's place in the galaxy. Ambassador Park hesitated before asking his next question. Ma'am, the Vexhai representative specifically requested to meet with you personally. He said he wanted to apologize. Hana remembered Sector Administrator Vexhai, the crystal being who had dismissed her warnings about the hegemony buildup. She had not spoken to him since the day she cut off his transmission during the final battle. Schedule it for tomorrow. 15 minutes. Through the observation deck windows, she could see construction crews working on humanity's newest project. Not warships this time, but exploration vessels. Sleek ships designed for discovery rather than destruction, equipped with Hana's space-folding technology to reach distant galaxies. Captain So Lee, the new head of the Exploration Division, joined her at the window. She was one of the young officers who had grown up during the war, shaped by humanity's transformation from junior partners to galactic leaders. The first wave launches next month, Captain Lee reported. 12 ships, 40 star systems, but this time we're not going alone. That had been Hana's decision. Each exploration team would include representatives from different species, former enemies who had learned to see humans as equals rather than threats. The old way of thinking, in terms of superior and inferior races, was being replaced with something new. The Alendi want to send their best xenobiologists, Captain Lee continued. They're excited about studying microorganisms with our new scanning technology. Hana smiled, slightly. The Alendi were a peaceful species that had been conquered by the hegemony centuries ago. Now they were free again, and they wanted to learn from the human who had started as a bacteria researcher. Approved. What about the others? The reformed. Hegemony wants to contribute their navigation specialists. The Crystal Union is offering their geological experts. Even some of the Outer Rim pirates want to join as security advisors. The transformation was not just about military power. Humanity had proven that cooperation worked better than domination, that diversity of ideas was stronger than rigid hierarchy. The old galactic order based on fear and submission was being replaced by voluntary partnerships. But not everyone was happy with the changes. 3 times in the past year, remnants of the old hegemony had tried to organize resistance. Each time, they had been defeated not just by human forces, but by coalitions of species working together. Late that night, when the station was quiet, Hana made her way to a small laboratory she had built for herself. It was not much different from her old lab on Kepler 442. The same type of microscopes, the same bacterial cultures, the same quiet focus on microscopic life. She still preferred this work to commanding fleets or negotiating treaties. But the galaxy had needed her to become something more than a scientist, and she had answered that call. Her personal assistant, a young officer named Tae Yoon, found her there at midnight, studying samples from a newly discovered world. "Ma'am," the Virex representative sent another message. "He's very insistent about that apology meeting." Hana looked up from her microscope. "Tell him I'll see him tomorrow, but also tell him something else." "Yes, ma'am." "Tell him that humanity doesn't hold grudges. We learn from the past, but we don't live in it. If he wants to build a better future, we're willing to work with him." The next morning brought another day of meetings, negotiations, and decisions that would affect billions of lives across the galaxy. But Hana faced it calmly. She had learned something important during the war. Being powerful did not mean being cruel. Having strength did not require using it to hurt others. Humanity had come a long way from being the junior species in the Galactic Confederation. They were now the architects of a new order based on cooperation rather than domination. And at the center of it all was a woman who had started as just another scientist studying bacteria in a research station. She was still that same person. But now when she spoke, civilizations listened. When she made decisions, the galaxy changed. She had been just one of them, an ordinary human doing ordinary work. Now she was the reason humanity no longer came to the galaxy as supplicants. They came as equals, as teachers, as friends. The quiet scientist had become the voice of a new age,